The vast, unforgiving expanse of the Pacific Ocean held countless secrets during the Second World War, but few moments were as utterly bewildering as the day a Japanese Zero fighter, a symbol of imperial might, descended from the tropical sky not onto a friendly airstrip, but directly into the heart of an Allied base. The pilot, a young man named Kenji Tanaka, climbed out, expecting a hero's welcome, only to find himself staring down the barrels of British rifles. His world, and perhaps the course of the war, was about to change irrevocably. The year was 1943, and the relentless sun beat down upon the makeshift airstrip of HMS Osprey, a vital, if isolated, Royal Navy air station nestled on a small, verdant island in the Solomon Sea. This speck of British territory, a crucial refueling and reconnaissance hub, was a constant thorn in the side of Japanese expansion and, consequently, a frequent target. Life here was a monotonous cycle of sweltering heat, sudden downpours, and the ever-present threat of enemy air raids. Morale was a delicate balance, maintained by the camaraderie of the men and the unwavering sense of duty that permeated the humid air, often thick with the smell of aviation fuel and damp earth. The distant, rhythmic crash of waves against the coral reef provided a constant, almost hypnotic backdrop to the daily grind, a stark contrast to the sudden, jarring reality of war. Leading aircraftman Thomas "Tommy" Atkins, a fresh-faced 20-year-old from Kent, was on runway duty that sweltering afternoon of August 14th. His uniform, perpetually damp with sweat, clung uncomfortably to his frame. He squinted against the glare, scanning the horizon, a routine he'd performed hundreds of times since arriving 6 months prior. The drone of aircraft engines was a familiar symphony, usually signaling the return of a battered Catalina flying boat or a flight of Royal Australian Air Force, RAAF, Wirraways from a patrol. But today, something was different. A single aircraft, sleek and menacing, appeared on the distant horizon, a dark smudge against the brilliant blue. Its silhouette was unmistakable, even to Tommy's relatively untrained eye. A Mitsubishi A6M0, the dreaded Zeke of Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service, a machine that had terrorized Allied pilots for years. A collective gasp rippled through the ground crew, quickly followed by a flurry of hushed, disbelieving exclamations. Alarm bells should have been blaring, anti-aircraft guns spitting fire, but the Zero was flying with an unnerving, almost leisurely confidence. It wasn't attacking, it was approaching for a landing. "Bloody hell," muttered Sergeant Major Davies, a grizzled veteran of the Western Desert, his face a mask of disbelief and a hint of grim amusement. "Is that chap mad? Or just terribly lost?" The Zero circled once, its distinctive Sakai radial engine sputtering slightly, a sign of low fuel or perhaps a minor mechanical issue, then began its final approach, wheels down, flaps extended. It touched down with surprising grace, a perfect three-point landing, rolling smoothly down the runway towards the hastily assembled, bewildered group of Allied personnel. The aircraft, despite its long flight, appeared remarkably intact, its grey-green paintwork showing only the usual wear and tear of combat operations, a testament to its pilot's skill. The silence that followed the engine's final cough was deafening, broken only by the chirping of unseen insects and the distant lapping of waves against the coral reef. Every man on the airstrip, from the lowest rating to the commanding officer, Commander Alistair Finch, stood frozen, rifles at the ready, but utterly perplexed. Finch, a man known for his unflappable demeanor, adjusted his cap, his brow furrowed in a mixture of caution and intense curiosity. The canopy slid back with a hiss, and a young Japanese pilot, no older than Tommy, emerged. He was slight of build, his flight suit stained with sweat and oil, his face grimed but resolute. He removed his goggles, blinking in the harsh sunlight, and then his eyes swept across the assembled men. His expression, initially one of weary relief, morphed into an uncomprehending horror. The uniforms were wrong, the faces were wrong. The language being shouted in hushed, urgent tones was utterly alien. He had expected the familiar sight of Imperial Japanese Navy personnel, the welcoming flags of the rising sun, perhaps a refueling crew. Instead, he saw khaki, navy blue, and the unmistakable Union Jack fluttering defiantly from a nearby mast, its colors stark against the tropical sky. His jaw dropped, his eyes wide with a dawning, terrible realization. He had made a catastrophic error, a navigational blunder of epic proportions, mistaking this Allied outpost for a friendly Japanese-held island. His body stiffened, every muscle locking. He froze, a statue of utter despair and shock, his hand still resting on the cockpit rim, as if contemplating a desperate, impossible retreat back into the machine that had brought him to this impossible predicament. The silence stretched, thick with tension, before the first order barked out, shattering the spell. "Hands up, mate, and don't you dare move!" The pilot, Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka, understood nothing of the words, but everything of the menacing posture and the glint of bayonets. His mission, his honor, his very existence had just taken an unimaginable turn. The genesis of a profound challenge, both for him and for the Allies, had just been laid bare on that remote Pacific airstrip, a moment of pure, unadulterated bewilderment for all involved. The sheer audacity of the situation, a top-tier enemy fighter landing intact, was almost too surreal to comprehend, a gift from the heavens for Allied intelligence. The immediate aftermath was a flurry of controlled chaos. Lieutenant Tanaka, still rigid with shock, was quickly disarmed and escorted away, his eyes darting wildly, a mixture of shame and terror etched upon his features. Commander Finch, ever the pragmatist, immediately understood the immense value of their unexpected prize. "Secure the aircraft, chaps. Every bolt, every wire, every scrap of paper is gold dust," he barked, his voice cutting through the lingering disbelief. Royal Navy engineers, led by the meticulous Chief Petty Officer Arthur "Art" Jenkins, a man whose hands seemed to possess an innate understanding of machinery, swarmed the Zero. They worked with a reverence usually reserved for their own aircraft, carefully documenting every detail, from the serial numbers to the wear patterns on the tires. The smell of aviation fuel, now mixed with the faint metallic scent of the aircraft's inner workings, hung heavy in the air, a potent reminder of the machine's deadly purpose. The Zero, a Mitsubishi A6M3 Model 32, was a revelation. Its lightweight construction, the absence of self-sealing fuel tanks, and minimal armor protection confirmed long-held suspicions about its design philosophy, speed and maneuverability at the expense of pilot protection. This was a stark contrast to the Allied approach, which prioritized survivability for its air crews. Art Jenkins, running his hands over the smooth aluminium skin, noted the ingenious simplicity of some components, yet the surprising complexity of others. The engine, a Sake-21, was a marvel of Japanese engineering, providing impressive power for its weight. Every dial, every switch, every instruction in kanji was photographed and meticulously catalogued, providing an unprecedented technical blueprint. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Tanaka was taken to a secure, isolated hut. His interrogation fell to Commander Finch, and more specifically, to Lieutenant Evelyn Reed, a quiet, unassuming woman from the Women's Royal Naval Service, WRNS, who possessed an extraordinary gift for languages and a keen understanding of psychology. Evelyn, fluent in Japanese, understood the delicate tightrope she had to walk. Tanaka, a product of the rigid Imperial Japanese military code, was expected to resist, to offer nothing but his name, rank, and serial number, and to view capture as the ultimate dishonor. His initial responses were indeed defiant, punctuated by long silences and a palpable sense of despair. He was Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka, 23 years old, from a small fishing village near Nagasaki, a pilot with 400 flying hours and 12 confirmed kills. He had been on a long-range reconnaissance mission, attempting to locate an Allied convoy, when a faulty compass and unexpected weather fronts had led him far off course, critically low on fuel. He had mistaken Osprey for a newly established Japanese forward airbase, a mistake born of desperation and exhaustion, a truly humbling error for a proud warrior. Evelyn, with her calm demeanor and unwavering gaze, offered him tea and a simple meal, a stark contrast to the brutal treatment he might have expected. She spoke to him not as an enemy, but as a fellow human, acknowledging his skill as a pilot, his courage in flying so far. She understood that breaking him would not come through force, but through a subtle erosion of his rigid world-view, appealing to his humanity. She spoke of his family, of the futility of further resistance, of the long journey home that awaited him if he cooperated. The humid air in the hut was thick with unspoken tension, the only sounds the whirring of a small fan and the occasional distant squawk of a tropical bird, a constant reminder of their remote location. The initial intelligence gleaned from the aircraft itself was already invaluable. The Zero's radio frequencies, its operational range, its armament, 2 20mm cannons and 2 7.7mm machine guns were all confirmed. The discovery of a detailed flight log, hidden beneath the pilot's seat, provided a treasure trove of information. Recent patrol routes, rendezvous points, and even the names of other pilots in his squadron. This was not just a captured aircraft, it was a window into the very heart of Japanese air operations in the region. The operational reality was that this single, accidental landing had provided the Allies with an unprecedented opportunity to understand their primary aerial adversary in the Pacific. The meticulous work of Art Jenkins and his team, combined with Evelyn Reed's patient, psychological approach to Tanaka, was laying the groundwork for a significant shift in the air war. The confrontation with this operational reality was proving to be a turning point, transforming a moment of enemy misfortune into a profound Allied advantage, a true stroke of luck for the Commonwealth forces. The technical analysis of Tanaka's Zero, designated Zeke-32 by Allied intelligence, became a top priority. Within days, the aircraft was partially disassembled, its components meticulously studied by a team of British, Australian and American engineers flown in specifically for the task. They confirmed the Zero's legendary agility, attributing it to its exceptionally light airframe and powerful engine. However, they also identified its critical vulnerabilities. The lack of armor around the pilot and fuel tanks made it highly susceptible to even light machine gun fire. This was a game changer. Allied pilots had previously been instructed to avoid direct engagements with Zeros, often finding themselves outmaneuvered, but now they had a clear tactical advantage. Aim for the wings and fuselage, and the Zero would likely explode or catch fire with devastating speed. This intelligence was rapidly disseminated across all Allied air units in the Pacific, transforming aerial combat doctrine almost overnight, giving pilots a newfound confidence. The Japanese command, meanwhile, was in a state of growing perplexity. Lieutenant Tanaka and his Zero had simply vanished. Initial searches yielded nothing. The official explanation was a probable ditching at sea, a common enough occurrence in the vast Pacific, given the immense distances involved. However, the lack of wreckage or distress signals left a nagging doubt among some senior officers. The loss of a skilled pilot was regrettable, but the disappearance of an intact Zero, especially a newer Model 32, was a significant concern, hinting at a deeper mystery. They could not fathom that one of their prized assets had landed directly into enemy hands, let alone that its pilot was now providing invaluable insights. This rigidity in their thinking, the inability to conceive of such a profound error or betrayal, became an unwitting ally to the British intelligence effort, allowing the Allies to exploit the situation without immediate Japanese countermeasures. Lieutenant Reed's patient work with Tanaka began to yield fruit. After several days of isolation, coupled with Evelyn's persistent, empathetic questioning, Tanaka's stoic resolve began to crack. He spoke of the immense pressure on Japanese pilots, the expectation of victory or death, and the profound shame of capture, a burden that weighed heavily on his soul. Evelyn, carefully avoiding any hint of gloating, used this to her advantage. She painted a picture of a war that was not going as well as Japanese propaganda suggested, subtly introducing doubts about the ultimate outcome and the sacrifices being demanded. She never directly asked for strategic secrets, but rather encouraged him to speak about his experiences, his training, his squadron's routines, and the daily realities of his life. From these seemingly innocuous conversations, a wealth of operational details emerged, far beyond what direct interrogation might have achieved. Tanaka revealed the typical patrol patterns of his unit, the 251st Kokutai, operating from Rabaul. He described their preferred attack vectors, their radio call signs, and even the specific hand signals used in formation flying. Crucially, he detailed the Japanese reliance on specific weather patterns for cover during long-range strikes, and the limited availability of spare parts for their aircraft, particularly engines, which often led to aircraft being grounded. He also provided insights into the morale of his fellow pilots, many of whom were exhausted and increasingly disillusioned by the relentless fighting and heavy losses. This human intelligence, combined with the technical data from the Zero, created a comprehensive picture of Japanese air capabilities and vulnerabilities, a truly invaluable asset. The operational validation of this intelligence came swiftly. Within weeks, Allied air patrols, now armed with precise knowledge of Japanese tactics and vulnerabilities, began to score unprecedented successes. On September 5, 1943, a flight of RAF P-40 Kitty Hawks, employing the newly developed Thatch Weave maneuver, combined with the knowledge of the Zero's weak points, ambushed a Japanese formation. They shot down 6 Zeros for the loss of only 1 Kitty Hawk, a ratio previously unheard of. The pilots reported aiming specifically for the Zero's fuselage and wings, observing spectacular explosions as fuel tanks ignited. This was a direct consequence of Tanaka's accidental landing and the subsequent painstaking intelligence work. The adversaries' perplexity continued as they struggled to understand the sudden, devastating shift in Allied aerial superiority, unaware that their own secrets had been laid bare. The incident at HMS Osprey had transformed from a bizarre anomaly into a pivotal moment, validating the power of intelligence and adaptability against rigid doctrine, saving countless Allied lives and aircraft. The lasting legacy of Lieutenant Tanaka's accidental landing and the captured Zero extended far beyond the immediate tactical victories. The intact aircraft, after its thorough examination at HMS Osprey, was carefully crated and shipped to Australia and eventually to the United States. There, it underwent further exhaustive testing, flown by Allied test pilots who marveled at its agility, but also confirmed its structural weaknesses. This flyable intelligence was instrumental in the development of new Allied fighter aircraft and tactics. Engineers studied its lightweight design, while strategists refined their understanding of Japanese aerial doctrine. The information gleaned from this single Zero directly influenced the design of later Allied fighters, such as the Grumman F-6F Hellcat and the Vought F-4U Corsair, which were built to withstand more damage and carry heavier armament, specifically to counter the Zero's strengths and exploit its weaknesses, leading to a decisive shift in air combat. The intelligence derived from Tanaka's interrogation, meticulously compiled by Lieutenant Reed and her team, continued to provide a steady stream of insights. His information on Japanese supply chain vulnerabilities, particularly regarding fuel and spare parts, allowed Allied submarines and aircraft to target critical shipping lanes with devastating effectiveness. The psychological profiles developed from his testimony helped Allied forces understand the Japanese warrior code, enabling more effective propaganda and psychological warfare campaigns, subtly undermining enemy morale without resorting to crude tactics. Tanaka himself, after providing all possible intelligence, was eventually transferred to a prisoner of war camp in New Zealand, where he spent the remainder of the war, a living testament to a moment of profound miscalculation. His fate, while far from glorious, was a stark contrast to the expected outcome for a captured Japanese officer, highlighting the Allied adherence to the Geneva Conventions, a fact that itself served as a subtle form of psychological warfare, demonstrating a different kind of strength. The forgotten heroes of this incident were not just the pilots who shot down Zeros, but the quiet, diligent individuals like Chief Petty Officer Art Jenkins and Lieutenant Evelyn Reed. Their meticulous work, often conducted in sweltering conditions and under immense pressure, transformed a stroke of luck into a strategic advantage that saved countless Allied lives. Art's detailed reports on the Zero's construction provided the blueprint for countering it, while Evelyn's empathetic yet firm interrogation of Tanaka unlocked the human element of enemy operations. Their contributions, though rarely celebrated in public, were fundamental to the Allied war effort in the Pacific, demonstrating that intelligence, often gathered far from the front lines, could be as decisive as any battle, a true testament to British ingenuity and perseverance. This incident also served as a powerful symbol of Allied adaptability versus Japanese rigidity. The Japanese military, bound by a strict code of honor and an unwavering belief in their own superiority, struggled to adapt to the changing realities of the war. Their inability to comprehend how a Zero could fall into enemy hands, or how their pilots could be so thoroughly outmaneuvered, stemmed from a cultural and strategic inflexibility. The Allies, on the other hand, demonstrated a pragmatic willingness to learn from every opportunity, to dissect enemy strengths and weaknesses, and to rapidly integrate new intelligence into their operational doctrine. This contrast was a microcosm of the broader conflict, where ingenuity and flexibility ultimately triumphed over rigid adherence to outdated strategies, ultimately securing victory. The story of Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka and his Zero became a quiet legend within Allied intelligence circles, a powerful reminder that even the most improbable events could turn the tide of war. It underscored the critical importance of every piece of information, every captured document, and every interrogated prisoner. The transformation it brought about in Allied air superiority in the Pacific was undeniable, contributing significantly to the eventual Allied victory. It was a testament to the resilience under adversity, the sharp minds of intelligence officers, and the profound impact of cultural understanding even in the crucible of global conflict. The human drama of war, often overshadowed by grand narratives, found a poignant expression in the tale of a lost pilot and the secrets he unwittingly delivered, forever altering the course of the Pacific theater. What an extraordinary twist of fate, eh? This tale of a lost pilot and a captured Zero truly highlights the unsung heroes of intelligence. If you found this glimpse into the Pacific War fascinating, do give us a like, share this story with your mates, and subscribe for more forgotten chapters of history. Your support helps us bring these incredible narratives to light. Cheers!